So many men unknowingly destroy their relationships by giving too much, sacrificing too much, and losing themselves in the process of trying to please a woman. They think love means proving their worth, when in reality, true respect and admiration come from strength, not servitude. In this video, we're going to uncover the behaviors you must never do for a woman if you want her to truly respect, desire, and cherish you. This is about reclaiming your value, stepping into your confidence, and finally understanding what makes a woman see you as irreplaceable. When a man begins to sacrifice his self-respect in an effort to keep a woman interested or happy, he is unknowingly eroding the very foundation that makes him attractive in the first place. Self-respect is not just a principle, it is an energy, a presence that communicates silently to the world who you are and what you stand for. Women are naturally drawn to men who exude quiet confidence, men who walk into a room with an air of certainty, not arrogance, but a calm assurance that comes from within. When you give up your boundaries, say yes when you mean no, or tolerate behavior that goes against your values, you are teaching her that your approval is cheap and that your loyalty does not require her respect. This instantly changes the dynamic because attraction is built on polarity, and polarity is rooted in strength. A man who is willing to bend himself out of shape to gain affection is not seen as loving, but as desperate, and desperation repels admiration. Many men are taught from a young age that to love a woman means to give her everything, to compromise endlessly, to prove your devotion through sacrifice. But there is a dangerous difference between healthy compromise and self-abandonment. When you sacrifice your self-respect to make her happy, you are sending a message that her happiness is more important than your dignity, and that creates a power imbalance that is difficult to repair. Women may initially appreciate the effort, but over time they sense that you do not value yourself, and a woman cannot truly value a man who does not value himself. Respect is the root of desire, and without respect, love begins to feel heavy and suffocating. The irony is that the more you sacrifice yourself, the less she feels for you, because admiration is only felt for men who hold themselves to a standard, regardless of who they are with. When you place her needs, wants, and desires above your own identity, you slowly lose the qualities that made her attracted to you in the first place. A woman falls for a man because he is grounded in himself, because he has a sense of direction, purpose, and strength that she admires. If you abandon all of that in an attempt to keep her around, you become a shell of the man she was drawn to, and this creates a cycle of resentment and emotional distance. You begin to feel unappreciated, but she cannot appreciate you because you are no longer standing in your truth. Self-respect is magnetic because it creates an aura of stability and leadership. When a man knows who he is, what he stands for, and what he will or will not tolerate, he becomes irreplaceable. Sacrificing your self-respect for validation or attention only leads to a slow erosion of trust, because deep down, she wants to feel that the man she is with cannot be moved or broken by pressure, and that his love for her does not come at the cost of his soul. Chasing a woman's attention or seeking her validation is one of the quickest ways a man loses his power and becomes invisible in her eyes. Attraction is not something you earn by constant effort or relentless pursuit. It is a natural response to strength, confidence, and presence. When a man chases a woman's attention, he is unconsciously communicating that her opinion of him matters more than his own opinion of himself. And this shifts the dynamic of the relationship. Instead of being the grounded, self-assured man she admires, he becomes a boy seeking approval, a man who feels incomplete without her acknowledgement. This constant pursuit creates pressure, and pressure destroys attraction because women are drawn to men who create emotional safety and calm, not men who make them feel suffocated by their neediness. A man who chases a woman's attention is unknowingly teaching her that she is the prize and that he must prove himself worthy of her. But true masculinity does not operate from this place of desperation. It operates from a quiet knowing that you are already valuable, already complete, and that your worth does not depend on her. Many men believe that if they show enough interest, if they constantly call, text, compliment, and chase after a woman, she will feel desired and secure in the relationship. But the truth is, women are not drawn to men who make them their sole focus. They are drawn to men who are selective, men who see themselves as the prize, men who live full, purposeful lives that do not revolve around anyone's attention. When a man's energy shifts from confidence to desperation, a woman instinctively pulls back, not because she is playing games, but because she feels that his need for her validation is draining. Women are intuitive and they can sense when a man is trying to get something from them instead of simply being himself. This is why men who chase often end up frustrated and confused, because the more they give, the less they receive, not realizing that their efforts are rooted in a lack of self-worth, and a lack of self-worth is never attractive. When you are constantly seeking validation, you create a dynamic where her attention becomes a reward, and you become addicted to receiving it. This addiction changes your behavior, making you less authentic and more focused on pleasing her instead of being yourself. You start overthinking every interaction, analyzing every word she says, and adjusting your personality to avoid rejection. But this only communicates that you do not trust yourself or your value. A man who trusts himself does not chase because he knows that if she is truly interested, she will meet him halfway. He does not fear losing her attention because he does not see her as his source of happiness. He sees himself as his own source of fulfillment. This is the energy that makes a woman feel drawn to a man, because she senses that he is not trying to control her or impress her. He is simply grounded, and that groundedness creates a sense of security that chasing can never provide. True confidence is not loud or boastful. It is quiet and consistent. It shows in the way a man moves through life with purpose, how he carries himself when no one is watching, and how he responds when someone pulls away from him. When a woman senses that her withdrawal or lack of attention does not shake a man, she begins to see him differently. She feels safe with him because his emotions are not dependent on her actions, and this stability is deeply attractive. On the other hand, a man who constantly seeks her validation becomes emotionally unpredictable, swinging between highs when she gives attention and lows when she withdraws it. This instability makes her feel responsible for his emotions, and that burden creates distance, not closeness. Women crave emotional leadership, and a man who can lead himself, regulate himself, and trust his own worth becomes magnetic without even trying. Chasing her attention will never make her love you more. It will only make her respect you less, because real respect is reserved for men who can walk away from validation-seeking behavior and still stand firmly in their identity. When a man makes a woman the absolute center of his world, he unknowingly creates a dynamic that drains both himself and the relationship. At first, it may feel romantic to dedicate all of your time, energy, and focus to her, to treat her like she is your entire purpose. But over time, this level of attention suffocates her attraction and erodes your own sense of self. A woman is naturally drawn to a man who has a life of his own, a man who is deeply rooted in his vision, his goals, and his mission. When you place her above everything else in your life, she begins to feel that your happiness depends entirely on her, and this creates pressure instead of love. Women desire a man who is fulfilled within himself, someone who doesn't need her to feel significant, but chooses to share his life with her. A man who sacrifices his passions, his friendships, his growth, and his ambitions to revolve entirely around a woman loses the very qualities that made him attractive to her in the first place, because she fell for a man with direction, not a man who abandoned everything to chase her approval. A healthy relationship thrives when both individuals have a life outside of each other, when the man has something bigger than the relationship to dedicate himself to. Masculine energy is deeply tied to purpose. It is this drive to create, to achieve, and to lead that makes a man magnetic. When you make her your entire purpose, you shift into an energy that feels ungrounded, and she begins to sense that you are no longer leading yourself. Women naturally test a man's strength, not always consciously, but instinctively, to see if he is stable and capable of handling life's challenges. If she feels that her moods or actions can completely shake your world because you have nothing else to ground yourself in, she will begin to lose respect for you. Respect is the foundation of attraction, and when you hand over your entire emotional stability to one person, you strip yourself of the balance and independence that creates desire. A woman does not want to be your entire life. She wants to be part of a man's already fulfilled life because this gives her a sense of security and admiration for who you are. When a man neglects his passions and goals in order to dedicate all of his energy to a woman, he starts to become resentful without even realizing it. Over time, he begins to feel unappreciated because he has sacrificed his own dreams for her, but she cannot appreciate this sacrifice because it did not come from a place of strength. It came from fear. Fear of losing her, fear of rejection, fear of being alone. Women can sense when a man is moving out of fear, and fear is never attractive. What creates deep admiration is a man who is anchored in himself, who values his growth and his journey, and who allows a woman to join him in that journey without losing himself in the process. A man who makes a woman his entire world may think he is proving love, but what he is truly proving is that he has abandoned his own identity, and no woman can fully love a man who does not love himself enough to maintain his individuality. A man's values and standards are the pillars of his identity, the invisible framework that shapes how he moves through life, how he is perceived by others, and how much respect he commands in any relationship. When a man compromises these values to win a woman's love or approval, he begins to dismantle his own foundation piece by piece. At first, it may seem harmless to overlook a boundary, to let go of a principle, or to make an exception just to keep her happy. But what feels like a small compromise becomes a habit, and this habit communicates weakness. Women are naturally drawn to men who have a clear sense of who they are, men who stand firmly in their beliefs, men who are not afraid to walk away from situations that do not align with their integrity. When a man bends his standards too easily, he teaches her that he can be swayed, that his sense of self is negotiable, and over time, this destroys the respect she feels for him. Respect is the foundation of love, and without respect, attraction begins to fade. A man's standards are not about arrogance or control. They are about self-respect and clarity. They show that he knows his worth and that he is willing to protect his energy, time, and values, even if it costs him temporary approval. Women subconsciously test these standards, not because they want to dominate a man, but because they are seeking safety and leadership. A woman feels safe with a man who is consistent, who does not waver based on emotion, and who does not betray himself just to keep her close. When she sees that he is willing to compromise everything for her, she feels the weight of that desperation, and this pressure erodes her admiration for him. A man who values himself does not fear loss. He understands that losing someone who does not align with his standards is not truly a loss because he is rooted in his identity. This level of security is magnetic because it communicates emotional strength and independence. When a man lowers his standards, he also lowers the quality of the connection he attracts. By accepting behaviors that go against his values, he sends a signal that he is willing to settle for less than what he truly desires. Over time, this leads to resentment, frustration, and a deep sense of emptiness because he has betrayed himself in exchange for a love that feels unstable and unfulfilling. A woman cannot truly admire a man who sacrifices his soul to please her. She may enjoy the control temporarily, but she will not feel safe or inspired by him. What she truly desires is a man who leads himself first, who has a code he lives by, and who is willing to walk away rather than bend that code for anyone. This strength is not loud or aggressive. It is silent and steady, and it creates a deep sense of respect that no amount of validation seeking or compromise can ever replace. One of the most common mistakes men make in relationships is giving far more than they are receiving, over-investing their time, energy, emotions, and even resources into a woman who is not matching that same level of effort. At first, this overinvestment may feel like devotion, like proof of love and loyalty, but in reality, it creates a dynamic of imbalance that slowly destroys attraction. When a man pours everything into a woman who is not reciprocating, he teaches her that his value is easily accessible, that she does not need to earn his energy, and that no matter how little she gives, he will always be there waiting. This changes how she sees him, not because she is unkind, but because human nature causes us to undervalue what comes without effort. A man who overinvests in someone who is underinvesting is not being loving. He is being fearful, fearful of losing her, fearful of rejection, and that fear seeps into every interaction, stripping him of the strength and stability that women find irresistible. A healthy relationship is built on mutual investment, a natural exchange of energy where both people contribute equally to the connection. When a man overinvests while she underinvests, he shifts into a position of chasing and proving, while she shifts into a position of comfort and control. This dynamic is not attractive to her because women are naturally drawn to men they can respect, men they can look up to, and a man who is constantly trying to buy love through excessive giving will never earn true admiration. Overinvestment often leads to resentment because deep down, the man knows he is giving more than he is receiving. But instead of stepping back and reassessing, he doubles down on his effort, hoping that one day she will see his worth and finally appreciate him. This rarely happens because appreciation is not born out of pity or guilt. It is born out of respect. And respect comes when a man values himself enough to not tolerate emotional imbalance. When a man pulls back his energy and starts valuing his own time and presence, everything changes. Women naturally feel drawn to a man who does not need them to feel whole, a man who can love deeply but also walk away if he is not being valued. Overinvesting communicates desperation, while balanced investment communicates strength. A man who is emotionally strong knows when to give and when to stop giving. He knows that his energy is not free to those who do not appreciate it. This mindset not only only protects his heart, but also creates a sense of mystery and magnetism because women are instinctively attracted to men who do not make themselves overly available. When a man invests more into himself, his growth, his purpose, his confidence, he becomes far more appealing than a man who abandons himself to chase after someone's attention, because self-respect is far more powerful than any form of overcompensation. Begging for a woman's love or loyalty is one of the most damaging things a man can do to himself because it instantly strips him of his dignity, authority, and masculine presence. Love that is genuine cannot be forced, and loyalty cannot be negotiated. They are either freely given or they do not exist at all. When a man lowers himself to pleading for affection, he communicates to her that he does not see himself as valuable, that her attention is worth more than his self-respect, and this destroys the natural polarity that creates attraction. Women are instinctively drawn to men who are rooted in their identity, who carry themselves with an inner strength that cannot be shaken by rejection or disinterest. The moment you beg, you hand over all of your power, and she no longer sees you as a man she can trust or admire. Instead, she feels pity or discomfort, and pity is the death of attraction because desire cannot coexist with desperation. Many men believe that if they love hard enough, sacrifice enough, and prove their devotion relentlessly, a woman will eventually feel the same way. But this is a painful misunderstanding of attraction. Real love is not earned through begging or overproving. It is inspired by a man's presence, confidence, and standards. When you plead for her love, you are telling her that you do not believe you can attract love naturally, that you do not see yourself as enough without her validation. This creates a cycle of emotional imbalance where she feels pressured to give something she does not feel, and you become increasingly insecure and frustrated because your efforts are not being reciprocated. A man who begs for loyalty is often a man who has abandoned his own boundaries, allowing disrespect or disinterest to continue because he fears being alone more than he values his own peace. This fear makes him cling tighter, but clinging only pushes her further away because true loyalty cannot be demanded. It is inspired by respect. When a woman senses that a man will tolerate anything just to keep her, she begins to lose trust in his leadership. Women crave emotional security, and emotional security comes from being with a man who knows his worth, who will not allow himself to be mistreated, and who has the strength to walk away from situations that do not serve him. Begging communicates the opposite. It tells her that you would rather compromise your dignity than risk losing her, and this lack of boundaries makes her feel unsafe rather than cherished. Even if she stays, she will not feel true respect or admiration for a man who cannot respect himself. Love that is begged for becomes a performance.